You're listening to episode 196 of the D6 podcast.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 podcast. Here's your hosts, Ron Hunter and Jeremy Lee.
This is the family ministry podcast that helps you connect church and home. Ron, I've been excited to do this episode with you. We have Jeffrey Wallace, which I will now be calling Dr. Jeffrey Wallace, even though he's not there. Do I have to wait? I should wait, shouldn't I?
Oh, you can pick on him, but if he accepts it, then I'm gonna have a problem with Jeffrey Wallace, because you can't use it until it's actually there.
He didn't. I tried during the interview, I believe, and he didn't accept it. But so what we're talking about today is really that further education, and I'm excited to talk to you about this. I know this is kind of a passion for you. But as ministers, I think there are a lot of questions around this topic. And Jeffrey Wallace, who's been a friend of D6 forever, he's in charge of Student Leadership University, a great organization. And he comes and he MCs pretty regularly the D6 conference, does a great job. He has been recently going for his PhD.
Correct.
And so you said, hey, I think our listeners, there are some of them who are considering DMin, considering PhD, or just trying to make a plan for their further education.
Correct.
Is it necessary? Is it not necessary? And just felt like Jeffrey would be a great person to have this conversation with, and that is the topic that we covered. And I can't wait to talk to you more about that. But before we get too far, speaking of talking, what about family faith talks? Teach us about this.
Yeah, well, let me tie it to the question you just asked. I remember when I started my entry point into my doctoral program, it was only because I had great conversations with my kids that I felt like I could commit to doing that while they were still at home. And I remember texting with my kids. I remember us sitting down talking, saying, hey, Daddy's thinking about diving back into this. I want to talk through how I think it'll impact the family, blah, blah, blah. Well, I get off to the very first intensive in the program I'm in. I'm on campus for, I think, 12, 13 days for an intensive, and I am overwhelmed. And that's an understatement. And that's why I thought you talking with Jeffrey would be incredible. So I text my wife, my kids, and I'll never forget my daughter replying back on that text. And she said, I had shared with her, she said, how's this going? And I said, hear me. I said, you know your dad, former military guy, says can't quit. But I only feel like I'm 70% confident I can even do this. But I'm 100% determined I'm going to get through it. But I don't know if I'm going to make it. Mm-hmm. And she texted back and says, Daddy, you got this. I printed out that text and I put it on a memento that I still have in my office right now. And it's those kinds of conversations that not only help the parent, but they help the child know that dad or mom is struggling. Mm-hmm. So if we're not asking those questions, if we're not having that dialogue, we're missing out. And most parents want to have it. They just don't know how to begin. Like, for me, talking to our kids is regular and routine. Pounding each other with questions is the foundation of conversation. And so what we've done is we've created this incredible resource called Family Faith Talks. And we give you the questions that get some of these deeper conversations started that allow you to bump into, number one, moments that connect, that create a bond between you and your son or your daughter, whatever their age, okay? And two, open up the door for more meaningful coaching conversations. What's the last time when think through, Jeremy, in the last week or two, maybe 3, your son asked a question, or you asked him or a question, one of your sons, hey, what happened here? And it instantly opened up the door for a heart connect and 2, a teachable moment. Can you think through maybe a moment where that's occurred for you?
Oh, on multiple levels with both of them. I mean, one of them that I can share is our son currently is deeply thinking about the necessity of school. He's come across
or the absence thereof.
Yeah, he's come across a YouTube video that kind of questions the whole school system and it is really fun because I think he sheepishly brought this to us with the thought that we were going to just slam him, and we both my wife and I have come to him and said, we love that you're questioning this and that you're asking good questions. Let's talk about how you can question this system and at the same time be responsible to it and do what you're supposed to do, but still have these questions in your heart.
That's right.
And investigate, and because for me that is just preparing him for the moments. This is my 11-year-old son. In just a few years, his mind's going to start asking questions about God and church and faith, and I want him to not stop. I don't want him to not ask those questions. I want him to investigate.
You gave him permission to ask everything,
yes.
even with us off limits.
That's it.
Now, for the parents whose kids are not coming to them, the Family Faith Talks book actually allows you to initiate, as the parent or grandparent, such conversations. Because sometimes our kids are either introverted, or maybe they've bumped up against unintentionally us as parents not giving them the space that you and your wife have, Jeremy. Maybe they don't feel that freedom. But if we start asking them questions, we're going to open up that door telling them, hey, it's okay to come and ask such questions. So I would ask you to consider getting a copy of Family Faith Talks and putting it in your car so that maybe the rider can open it up and say, hey, here's the question we want to ask on this car ride. Or, maybe it's at the dining room table and we pull it out at the end of dinner and we just throw out, or at the beginning of dinner, throw out a question and we kind of work through it. You don't need to work through 10 questions at one time, just one, maybe 2. And there's a question for mom and dad. There's a question for the kids. And the kids can ask the mom and dad one. They can ask the other. And I tell you what, if you don't think questions are the foundation of opportunity and relationship, you have forgotten what building relationships are all about. Can
I ask a question?
Sure.
Can I ask everyone listening to this to please pray that my son does not drop out of middle school?
Right.
Because,
That's right.
I mean, we're talking in just a second about getting a PhD. I just want him to start out by getting to high school. Because it's in question currently at the place. But let's go ahead and ask you that are listening, what are your plans for furthering education? Do you need to do any more education? Do you need to do what do you need to do? Do you need a certification? Do you need an online training? Do you need to go back to seminary? Do you need an MDiv? Do you even need a PhD? All of these things is the journey we are going to be discussing, and I think everyone listening can take this time to listen to this interview and begin asking in your heart, God, where do I need to go in this area of preparing not just my heart, but my mind to do ministry? So after the break, we'll be hearing more from Jeffrey Wallace on the idea of furthering education and ministry. So happy to be back with our friend Jeff Wallace.
What's up,
what's up? I think this is like your 42nd time to be interviewed on the podcast.
As long as you invite me, I'm coming.
We got some water for you, man.
Well, thank you
treat
so
you
much.
Right.
I appreciate it. Oh my gosh, in this deer park.
you just ran out of a general session, the last general session at D6 conference. You've been doing emceeing. How's that been going?
It's been real awesome, man. It's been cool to hang out with my buddy Tommy. Shout out to Pastor Tommy, and hanging out with Ron and all of the great attendees here at the conference, man. It's been real fun.
If you guys don't know Jeff, he is a nationally known author, urban ministry communicator, innovator, leader, and life coach. Will you life coach me a little bit today? He serves as the executive director of the Lift Tour and the Youth Pastor Summit for Student Leadership University, incredible organization. Education. SLU is a national organization designed to develop and equip student leaders to think, dream, and lead. SLU strives to instill character-driven decision-making, ownership of biblical values, and a commitment to influence through service.
Oh man, that sounds pretty impressive. That's really
That's
cool.
You. And a little birdie told me that pretty soon we're going to be able to say, right after all of that, he's also a PhD.
Yeah.
You're going for the doctorate.
I am going for the doctorate. I'm currently in the process of getting my PhD in organizational leadership.
Why? Why in the world would you do that?
Well, interesting fun fact, before I started at Student Leadership University, I served for 23 years as an executive pastor and student pastor at my church in Atlanta, and I was on the path to be the next senior pastor there. I was going to be the successor of my pastor, and so, I wanted to get the DMin because the DMin really is for those individuals who are going to pastor or want to teach in seminary for the most part, but then once I transitioned to my role at Student Leadership University, a lot of things that we do things with colleges that are even outside of your Christian colleges or seminaries, and so I just felt like in the organization I'm working with right now, the PhD would be a more applicable degree, more so than a DMin.
Now, and that was one of my first questions, the difference between PhD and DMin. Yep. Because I think Ron is the one, Ron Hunter from D6 was one of the ones who suggested this topic. He wanted me to peruse this with you because he cares a lot about it, and he thinks one of the things that we want to get you to help us clarify for the ministers out there is the difference between a DMin degree and a PhD, which you've done a little bit, but go a little bit further with that, the requirements and why a minister in a church, why would he choose one over the other?
Got you. Great question. So first and foremost, the major difference is that a DMin is more of a project-based degree. It's a project-based doctorate, meaning that it's going to have a specialization. It's very narrow in a specialization. More guys get DMins who are going to be pastors, or again, they want to teach or be a part of a denomination, or they want to teach in a seminary exclusively as a professor. Whereas a PhD is more of a social science degree. It's very much bathed in research. Obviously, the dissertation process, and it's going to allow you to teach in any academic environment, and so it doesn't put you in the realm where you can only do it at a seminary level, but you can teach in colleges and schools anywhere in the country. And it really, at the end of the day, it boils down to career path. So if you're going to stay in the career path of the local church, or you're going to stay in the career path, or you want to teach in seminaries or do things with the denomination, the DMin is a great doctoral degree to get. But if you are considering to teach outside of those realms, or to work outside of the area of ministry things, then that's when you want to consider the PhD. And you're looking at a difference of time between probably, say, 2 years versus 2.5 years versus 4+. You have, what they will allow you to do is they have this thing where you take all of your seminars or your workshops or classes between 2 and 2.5 years. And then you go into this process where they call you, they say you're in the ABD status. And that's all but dissertation. And they'll give you up to 7 years to write the dissertation, because it's a long, tedious process, because obviously you got to do a lot of research. When you are doing a PhD, once you complete your dissertation, you are labeled a scholar or a specialist in this particular field. Whereas for your DMin, you're having a project which is considered your dissertation, and the project is something that can be strategy-based, something that will, you could take a topic like church planning or church multiplication, write a specialized project on that. But with a PhD, people see you as a specialist in that particular field because of the depth of research, the quantitative and qualitative study that you have to do with that particular degree program.
Are you going to make people call you doctor?
Nope. I will still be Jeff.
You've already thought through that?
I have. I'm going to be Jeff. I'm going to always be Jeff. Now,
unless when somebody makes you really mad, then you're going to be like, that's Dr. Wallace to you?
Well, no, I'll say that's Jeff Wallace, PhD.
I want to imagine, let's just say I never would be, but let's say I was interested in PhD.
You should. I can see Jeremy, PhD.
And you're giving me that inside scoop. Give it to those who might be interested. What are some tricks of the trade that you wish you would have known when you started?
Well, I think it's really important, whether you're doing a DMin or a PhD, to have mentors. One of the things that I've been very blessed to have is some guys who've already kind of gone down that process, gone through that journey. And so people like Ron Hunter, Sean McDowell, our vice president of our organization, Brent Crow, they've gone through that process. So even before I entered into the PhD program, I kind of just wanted to seek some wise counsel and get an idea of what was I getting myself into and what should I expect. And so I think that's number one. Get some people who will make a commitment that, man, I'm going to walk you through that process, or at least be a mentor, a person to encourage you, because you're going to need a lot of encouragement. There'll be some times you're going to hate your life, you know. And then I think you also have to be willing, when you start the program, regardless, either one, whether it's the DMin or the PhD, there are some things that you're going to just have to say, I need to adjust. I'm going to have to say no to some things. You know, I do a lot of speaking and traveling, and so there's some things that I've just had to say no to, which is hard for me because I love what I do. I love to get an opportunity to travel and to speak and to share and consult, but I just can't because of, I need to put margins in my life and have balance in my life. I still want to be a good husband because my wife said it's cheaper to keep her, and want to be a good father to my boys, and so I can't watch Sports Center as much as I used to, and I don't travel as much. So I think it's important to make a decision after you get wise counsel to decide, hey, what are some things that I can give up, or I'm willing to give up? If it's the next 2, 3, or 4 years of my life, then I'm going to set some margins and boundaries in place. And then I think you should research a couple of schools and a couple of programs and look at the overview of their programs, because every program is different. So I'm getting my PhD in organizational leadership, and so a lot of the topics of the classes and the workshops and the sessions, they interest me. Well, you can go to a school and you can get a PhD in Christian leadership, which is completely different from organizational leadership, or if you're going to get your DMin, some DMins and some PhDs require languages, others don't, and so I think you want to research several programs to just see what is going to be the most conducive for you. What do you think you can really connect with? Because you're giving not only your money, but your life to this program.
I imagine there might be somebody who likes the idea of the respect that comes with it, the opportunity that comes with it.
Sure.
But they probably don't need to do it. Who's that person that they may want it, but they may want it for the wrong reasons?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremy. I think you have to really soul search that. It's because it's so subjective. I mean, I think if you feel called very much, and to be, let's say a long life, or a lifelong children's pastor or a youth pastor, then a master's or a master's of divinity, that's good, but if you have a desire, I think those of you who are out there and you're thinking, man, maybe at some point I want to teach either in a seminary or in a traditional academic college environment, I think those are the ones who are looking to go down the track of a doctoral program. Or if there's some of you who you're in the church world and you're praying about and considering, maybe one day I want to work for a denomination or association or something to that effect, you may want to consider that. But even, in regular, the public sector, if you want to be things like a principal, a headmaster of a school, I think people need to think about the long-term trajectory of their life when they're going in to determine whether they need to do a PhD or a DMin or not. Because, it really, honestly, to be completely honest, if I was not working at Student Leadership University, if I wasn't doing the things that I was doing, and our organization was not structured the way it was, I would not be suffering through this program. So I think you have to really soul search. And there is nothing wrong. Here's the deal. I'm no more smarter than the person who has their undergrad degree. It is just a career decision. It's like, they say in the streets, this is a business decision, So I think that people have to be okay. It's no knock if you decide, hey, that's not for me.
How are you going to celebrate when it's done?
Dude, I am going to binge watch some of my favorite shows. I don't even know what's going to be out right there. And I'm going to probably become a season pass holder to something, and I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to take probably about a couple of weeks off, wake up and just watch Sports Center all day long.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah, real fun.
Keep working at it. It's on the way.
Yeah, man.
Hey, you've been working hard all day.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to give you a break now. Thank you for being with us.
I appreciate you having me.
Jeff Wallace is with us. If they want to find you online, what's the best place to find you?
Well, you can get me on Instagram.
On the gram?
I'm on the gram, baby. At Jeff, what is it? I am Jeff Wallace. All of my handles are pretty much I am Jeff Wallace. I try to keep it simple. So Twitter, I am Jeff Wallace. Instagram, I am Jeff Wallace. Or you can go to our website, www.slu.com.
Awesome. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you to Jeffrey Wallace. Can't wait to call you Dr. Jeffrey Wallace. Ron won't let me do that. Hey, Ron, before we just completely leave this, I want to get your take on this.
Yeah.
The minister who hasn't been to seminary yet, and maybe they just simply can't. Maybe life or money or geography or whatever reason, at this particular moment, they just can't. What can they do to prepare their mind to be sharp for ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody's familiar with the set of books called the Harvard Classics, the president of Harvard University said, I can give you 3 feet of an education. And his idea was he was going to publish books on English literature. He was going to publish books on science and math. And this is a complete set of what we would call a multidisciplinary approach. I happen to know of a handful of people who have never been to college, never been to seminary, and certainly, obviously, no doctoral degree. But if you put them in a room with people who have, they hold their own. And I would say to them, be a good reader. I'm not trying to say do that in place of. If you can afford and you've got time and the ability, there's something about being in an educational environment that will stretch you both from the textbooks, from the teacher, and from your peers. But if you absolutely cannot, be a disciplined reader. And I would read history, I would read biographies, I would read leadership books, I would read commentaries. Whatever your field is, be balanced in it. And tackle that, because that's where your area of learning is. I mean, textbooks. And by the way, I'm going to confess, when I was an undergrad, I read as little of the assigned text as I could and often didn't read at all, thinking I can solely take it in from the lecture and get by. And I regret that journey. Had I read, it would have absolutely magnified what the teacher said. It would have made me a better student. Now, when I got to grad school in my master's and my doctoral, I fixed those disciplines. But when I was younger, I didn't understand the value of reading.
One more kind of brush on this, and then we will close it out. One of the reasons I enjoy this gig with you is because you are so different than me. Our personalities are incredibly different.
I think that's why we balance each other, Jeremy. I love it.
But this is a topic where we're just incredibly different. Your love for academics and I learn from you every time I'm around you, and this is one of the places that you just have a love to learn. Mm-hmm. I kind of wish I had, in the way that you do, really in the area of academics. It's easy for me to say, "Gosh, that's just a bunch of red tape and bibliographies and notations and all this research junk that just is to me is like complete waste of time. It's something you absolutely love. So speak to a minister who has my viewpoint that says, I'm here to just help kids. I'm here to help teenagers. I don't need your degree to feel good about myself. How would you lovingly tell them, well, it's not really just about that?
Yeah, and if you asked 20 different academic professors like myself, they probably get 20 different answers, but I hope our core is the same. One of the things I love about you, Jeremy, and I think we're each admiring each other for different traits, you can take any topic and you immediately find transferable application to it. And I don't care what you do with academia, if you can't find that transferable application, it's lost, because we're not in a pursuit of knowledge. We're in a pursuit of transformation. Mm-hmm. We should be trying to transform who we are. And literally every day I look for a lesson I can learn from somewhere. It may not be from a textbook. It may just be from a conversation, a situation. So if you're in that area of, I just don't think higher education is important, I would say to you, and the same thing I say to the students that I teach, I want you to represent your ministry. I want you to represent Christ, and I want you to represent the bigger body in an excellent way. And it's one thing to have some street smarts and some practical areas, but it's also vitally important to understand the foundation that supports your idea of application, so that if you get a differing thought, how do you put it through a filter to know if it's right? And if you understand the theory, you'll keep your footing underneath you. And it won't just be, oh, this is practical. Because when it's just practical, I've seen too many ministry leaders chase one practicality and then chase another one, and they don't realize they conflict with each other. But the people in their pew, many of them have that type of higher education and critical thinking, and they go, where's our pastor going right now? And it becomes confusing. And if you have the theory, you'll maintain the respect. That's what I would say.
And absolutely. And I would add on that, you just can't get around the credibility gap.
Yeah.
Which is if you don't have education, experience, and endorsements, people won't value what you have to say. We're just all trained that way. And so education is part of that. So all agreed and understood, but thank you. Thank you to Jeffrey Wallace, and also thank you to Ron Hunter for ruining somebody's life who listened to this today and who realized, oh my goodness, God might be calling me to something else. And if that's you, God bless you, and email Ron when it gets really hard. All right, we hope you have had a great time listening to this. I hope you have a great week of ministry, and thank you for listening to the D6 Podcast.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.